historically, moving away from the way we've always done things, right, is usually the biggest challenge that companies have when it comes to implementing, any kind of, technology and implementing any kind of change. So how can small brokers get over this change management hump?
I think this is an interesting thought, right? Change management is not easy to start with. Everybody struggles with, when the moment you call it a change, people say, well, I'm opposed to it. But we are all changing in our day-to-day behavior. We don't look the same way, 2 years from now or a year from now, right? Sometimes during the pandemic, we don't look the same, right? So change is part of our nature, except that we don't accept it. There are certain problems or mindsets that actually become a bigger challenge for brokers. So, if you look at the broker community, the first thing is brokers always say that, they want to wait for the technology to mature. And in today's world, that wait is the killer. Because, how do you adapt to a technology that is changing rapidly and adapting to business needs? Two, when you adapt to technology, you influence the change. So if you don't adapt to the technology as a broker, you're not making the technology work for you ever. So it's a slippery slope in many ways, and a vicious cycle where you're just basically left alone, right? Left out. So that's the biggest concern. The brokers have to just get over it. They have to adapt to technology immediately if they're not ready. The second part is identifying the areas where they need to adapt to technology. This is, a lot of our good customers have said this on your show and other shows as well, is that take a stock of what technologies you already have. And the ones that you're not using or the ones that you think they don't align with your strategy, take it up. You have to have a strategy. The strategy should be consistency is the keyword. Consistency for the carrier. We've said all through is, when you're talking to a carrier, don't give them a runaround. If you're telling a carrier to use one technology for visibility, one technology to find your notes, and another technology, or call your office to find out if their invoice has been paid, or submit through another way, you already lost the carrier. That is the core of all the issues that we face in this industry. So as a broker, do your part. Don't give a runaround to the carrier. How do you do that? You find technology that is consistent experience for the carrier. Carrier should go from finding your load, tracking your load, submitting your documents, checking the status, all of it without ever having to jump around. That is it. And that is exactly what digital brokers have done, right? Except that they've done it in a small ecosystem, as opposed to doing it across all the carriers. So that's the second part is that. The third part is, when you adapt to technology, this is where, so brokers go from having a lot of patients not adapting to technology to losing their patience when they adapt to technology, because they think, I've adapted to technology, let technology do the magic overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. So you have to have patience, because you're growing here, you're growing your network, you're building your business. You're going to take a one load wonder carrier that's moving one load with you, get more loads from them, more loads. At some point, they're going to tip off and become your core carrier. They're not going to go from point A to point B overnight. And that journey happens in two ways. Two elements create the journey. One is your technology, your experience for that carrier. Two, your relationship with that carrier. If you treat that carrier well, you give them good rates, you give them good freight, and you're not treating them like a number. Obviously, at the end of the day, you want to make money and they need to make money. Both that is as transparent as it is, right? But at the same time, how you treat this carrier, how you give the value to the carrier, walks that carrier down that path, and at some point they'll flip into becoming your core carrier. That's just how it goes. So it needs a lot of patience and commitment. So these are the three things that brokers should have. And when they do, sky is the limit. Literally sky is the limit for them to grow their business.
As I was listening to what you were talking about there, you talked about, the role of technology, you talked about the role of relationships, and it made me think, there was so much focus 20 years ago on customer relationship management, right? CRM, and CRM systems were kind of, they're still big today, but when they were coming of age back in the early 2000s, that became, a key area where a lot of companies were investing in. And I think what you just talked about there is kind of developing a strategy that's built around carrier relationship management. And what does that mean? What does a carrier relationship management technology mean? What does a carrier relationship management processes mean? What does carrier relationship management mean from how we interpersonally relate to one another? So I think starting with that and thinking that way, I think is a good step, a good starting point for many brokers.